thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I'm so happy to be here.
You are so kind. I know we've been trying to get together and COVID and then your operation and whatever. It wasn't even an operation.
Life always intrudes. Procedure.
The procedure.
That was we'll call it the procedure.
The procedure. We'll talk about it later. A bit of a trauma for all of us because we were watching shows together and stuff, and then it all kind of got caught up. But I'm so grateful you're here.
Thank you.
And I know this is the hardest part for most of my guests. I want them to brag a little bit about themselves. What fun things, what can you tell me about yourself?
Well, let's see. I'm a Utah girl, grew up in Utah and love it. Yeah. I've always been a really active person. Well, until some circumstances change that we'll talk about a little bit.
Oh, yeah, Rishann, by the way. I forgot to mention your name.
Rishann Nielson. Yeah. And I really have always loved active things. I had some neat experiences when I was younger. In high school, I ran hurdles and qualified for the Junior Olympics, actually, with that.
Well, I don't think I knew that. That's cool.
Yeah. And then in college, I ended up ballroom dancing and had the opportunity to dance with the ballroom dance team at BYU and go and participate with their touring team. So that was awesome. Wow. And did a lot of things that I really enjoyed and had a good time with. Professionally, ultimately ended up working for the FBI. I was hired to work as a special agent, and
nice.
It was, a dream come true in a lot of ways. I was like, wow, I'm so grateful and happy for this experience. Ultimately, my life changed a lot after working for them for a year and a half. And now I have a lifestyle that's a lot different, but it's something that I want to talk about a little bit more with you today, which has led to really a lot of blessings in my life that I didn't expected, and joys and happiness that I never could have imagined would come my way. But I guess that's my bragging part.
That's pretty impressive.
Some of the cool things that I've had the opportunity to participate with.
So impressive. And I that I invited you here because you really are an embodiment of joy. I met you not that long ago, but every time I'm with you, I could think, wow, this lady is just so happy and so wonderful. And I had no idea all the hurdles you have had to cross and still smile and have come to my house and do parties in book club and whatever we've been doing together.
Right.
So tell me about how those lessons you were talking
about. Kind of
where
it all got started.
Yeah.
So I feel like even when I was pretty young, I always wanted to excel. Like that was important for me. And so I think my parents sensed that in me, and they gave me a challenge. Well, more a requirement when I was 12 years old.
Fully grown, right? 12 years old.
Yeah. They said, okay, so now that you're 12, you're going to be buying your own clothes and paying for activities that you want to do. So, so figure that out.
What?
and so I took it and ran with it. Admittedly, I think it was also related to we had some times of financial struggles too. And so, my parents wanted me to develop that skill and resilience, but it would also be helpful for the family. And so previous to that, I'd actually already started babysitting. And I remember babysitting for $1 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Up to probably the maximum number of kids that I had the opportunity to babysit were 5, including a baby.
For $1.
$1 an hour.
For 5 children. That's like slave labor.
And so, but that's what I did. So I babysat and formed strong relationships with the people I had the opportunity to work for that way. In fact, one family, probably I was about 14 or 15, I guess. The parents decided that they were going to go on a trip, and they said, okay, so how about you come and, just take care of everything? And they had 4 kids. And I was like, Sure, sounds good.
Overnight and everything.
Oh, yeah, for about 3 or 4 days.
Crazy. That's like completely illegal, right? Because you didn't have a driver's license.
No.
But they obviously trusted you enough to do that.
Yeah. So it was during the school year. So I still had my school. And so I would get home from school and they would get home from school and I would be there and I'd make them dinner and put them to bed.
Oh, wow.
And then their grandparents who lived nearby did come to help them get ready for school in the morning because I had to leave before they did to go to my classes. And although actually, thinking back, I'm not sure why the grandparents didn't take care of them, but
not
instead
enough
it was me.
Yeah.
That could have been it.
Yeah.
But it was fine. Like for me,
That's
it was
impressive.
just, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And I had paper outs. And then when I could drive, I decided, well, I can make more money if I clean houses. So
What?
So I put up a sign I lived in Alpine at the time. We just lived in the center of town. And there was this little store called the Alpine Market, and you could kind of just post things on their wall. So I put up this sign that said, house cleaning, and left my phone number.
Wow.
And a lady called me. And so then I started cleaning her house. And so basically from that very early age, I was just really accustomed to relying on myself, like my abilities. Okay, I have to figure out this problem. And so what am I going to do?
I'm messing up my children. Too spoiled.
Well, I don't know that what my parents did would work with every child either, though. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, I think it might scar them forever. Hopefully I'm not scarred. But no, ultimately, I think it was a blessing. It was a good thing for me and helped me to develop abilities. And because we didn't have a ton of money, I didn't have the opportunity to really take lessons or things that I had really wanted to do. I mean, I remember when I was 14 seeing a play at the Health Center Theater, and it was, music dance theater. And I thought, oh my goodness, that would be so amazing. And so, but, my family's money was supporting the family. My money was buying me clothes and any other thing that I could possibly afford.
Right.
And so, lessons just really weren't an option. But I wanted to do something. And so I ended up trying out for different sports teams in high school. Now, I didn't have a lot of technical skills because I hadn't been trained in them, but I was fast. And so I was a really fast runner. So sometimes I could make the teams because I was faster than everybody, and they're like, well, we'll work on your technical skills. But the opportunity that I did have to shine in high school was with track. And so I ended up being a hurdler.
Nice.
And actually, it's interesting how that happened. The people on the track team at that time, I had been a sprinter. They were like the champions. I mean, they set the state record and everything. And I was fast, but not as fast as them. And so they said, well, we need something else for you to do because you are fast. So I became a hurdler and ended up qualifying for the National Junior Olympics with that.
Wow.
My sophomore year.
Wow.
But we didn't have money, and so I didn't end up going.
How frustrating.
Didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then my junior year, I tried out for the soccer team and was able to do that, but then had an injury and partially tore my ACL.
Ouch.
So yeah, that kind of wiped that out. And then track that year, which was pretty devastating because at that point it was something that I was really excelling with. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. But it's so interesting looking back because that changed my plans. It changed my focus. And because I realized, oh, wait, this could just be taken away. And so ultimately, interestingly, it ended up leading me to what I did in college, which was ballroom dance. And
you still look like a ballroom dancer, really.
I love ballroom dance still.
Yeah.
But I had always wanted to go to BYU since, they were kind of the mecca for ballroom dance teams.
Yes.
And but because I was paying for college, my parents were like, you're paying for college, figure that one out too. And so I worked really hard academically and was able to get a scholarship, a 4-year one to Utah State, but not 4-year to BYU.
Nice. Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And so so that was just another moment of, oh wow, I really wanted to ballroom dance, but okay, but now I don't have the money. I need to go to Utah State. And they had a dance team there that was more like a club, which I really loved participating with. But I thought that maybe that ballroom dance dream was just something that wasn't going to happen either. Ultimately, I ended up going to BYU for a graduate program and did a master's degree there.
Nice.
And did have the opportunity to dance there, which was amazing. It was brief. It was just for my master's program, but I loved it. But I mentioned those things just kind of as background of, even though, there were hard things, I'd always felt like I could work my way through them. Like I could just put my nose to the grindstone and work hard and still make some good things happen. And
you are a
hurdler. Yes, that's true.
An analogy of your life.
That's true. And so I did a few different things professionally, but wasn't really feeling fulfilled, I guess. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. I took a career test, believe it or not, after my master's degree, and I was like, oh my gosh, who does that? And so, but fortunately, the career counselor was really encouraging. He was like, no, it's okay. Careers change. You're fine. But anyway, interestingly enough, the top career that came out was law enforcement. And I was like, law enforcement?
With your ballroom body,
And I was like, well, I don't really think I want to be a police officer. And I'm like, well, maybe I should do the FBI.
Just a little thing.
And so I thought, okay, well, I'll just throw it out there and see what happens. Who knows if they'll take me or not. But, after their very long process and different hurdles that I went through, I was hired to work as a special agent. And,
so cool. And you were in a movie.
And I really enjoyed a lot of what I was doing. I mean, certainly it's not the same as, just the movies and TV, which I think is the case with any career that is then portrayed on the screen. But it was still cool. And I enjoyed it. I was working for them for about a year and a half, and then I was participating in some training activities at their training academy in Quantico, Virginia, and had a couple of back-to-back traumatic brain injuries.
Doesn't sound good.
No, and I really had no idea of. I mean, it wasn't a world I was familiar with, like having significant health challenges, because fortunately, even though I had had different athletic injuries up to that point, overall I had been pretty healthy. But I had this brain injury, first of all, in even a sparring activity that we were doing. And then ultimately, just a few days later, ended up getting another one, which, if you're familiar with brain injuries, that's really disastrous.
Yes.
It's really, really important to make sure that you are fully healed from any brain injuries that you have before you have a risk of getting another one.
Right.
And that ended up being really kind of a nuclear bomb on my life, because what ended up happening for me was it sparked really severe migraine headaches. Well, ultimately, initially, I just had a headache all the time. All the time. And
I hate those. I've had them.
And nothing could alleviate it. And in fact, the medical professionals that I saw tried a variety of different medications to try and help. And it didn't really do much at all for my symptoms. and caused a bunch of other problems. Like I got pancreatitis, and then my heart was doing weird things, and they just kept having it.
Drugs.
Yeah, I had really strong reactions to them, and so we had to just scratch that. But the only thing that I could do was I really just kind of sat and stared for most of the day. Now that sounds really wild, but
just resting.
But yeah, stimulation of any kind just hurt, like it made it worse. And so anywhere I went, I had earplugs just rammed in my ears as far as I could put them in. Screens bothered me. So like TV screens or computer screens, even just regular mental exertion, even outside of a screen, like reading, just things hurt. And talking to people, for some reason, my voice in my own head could be really excruciating. And so I actually really just kind of had to talk like this. Whenever I talked to anybody, I couldn't have any inflection in my voice because it hurt so much. So this was literally
gives me chills.
How I was. And I couldn't move my head except for very, very slowly.
Oh my
because it hurt so much.
Yeah.
And so I had, of course, was done with everything with the FBI, with that kind of brain trauma. Mm-hmm. You can't work as a special agent. And
talk about a noisy profession, right? Intense.
Yeah. And so many things, I mean, just felt wiped out, like even spending time with family members because kids were too loud. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't be around them. And just regular activities. And so I ended up, the place that I ended up moving to after all this happened, it was really interesting because like almost my only social activity was church because I still wanted to go to church.
Yeah.
But I would hope that no one would talk to me.
Right.
Which sounds odd, but I was like, it'll hurt. Like,
you're such a social person.
Yeah.
That would have been so difficult because you love people.
I do. And so, and the crazy thing too was that it felt like I was in this prison, but nobody could see it.
Right.
Because it was within my own head, because I looked normal and still talked normal, which I'm grateful for because, some people have traumatic brain injuries and they have a lot of cognitive issues and things that they also struggle with. Mm-hmm. And so I'm grateful that wasn't a part of it. For me, it was just the excruciating pain but that nobody could see. And so it was hard to try to explain it to people too, and people when they would want to be friends, and wanted me to come to their house or things, and I always just had to turn it down, and
that's so hard.
And so there was the physical aspect, but then just emotionally, it was a struggle. My life, everything that I felt like I had valued, or most of the things that I felt like made me, were gone. I didn't have physical capacity anymore. And a career with the FBI was done, and maybe anything else too. The medical prognosis with the history that I have is this is permanent. This is your life. And so
and I can imagine your relationships, how they would have changed, going from an energetic, gorgeous, dancing, famous, and now you're just sitting there trying to not hurt.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That was what it was.
Yeah,
and literally,
it really is like a movie,
Like I went, so I was married at the time, and we had right before this happened. Well, or actually rather, I had been scheduled about 6 weeks after this happened. I had been going to move to Los Angeles, and I was going to be working there, kind of in my dream area with the FBI. Things, I was like, this doesn't happen, Yeah. And so we were going to be moving to LA, and had moved out of our other place, but then we ended up moving in with some of my husband at the time, his family.
Yeah.
And
because of the injury.
Yeah. And even being with them, I was grateful to have people around, but I couldn't really participate either. Like I just had to be by myself. And it was kind of interesting because, sometimes I would just go outside just to try and avoid stimulation, but at least then I could see nature, so that was something I could do. And there was this cat, like a wild cat that would kind of come around and so for something to do, I thought, well, maybe I can become friends with the cat, which sounds so wild, cool, but that was where I was at. That literally, I'm like, what else can I do? Maybe I'll just see if I can tame this cat. And so it actually did kind of become my friend because it would come and sit on my lap.
It's an understanding, non-judgmental, not pushy friend.
Yeah,
no, it's just a soft cat. I love it.
Yeah, and so ultimately, with my relationship with the man that I was married to, even in the best of relationships, you're gonna have a challenge when you have something that life-changing. Yeah. And I think the statistics are that I think like only 20% of marriages, can handle something like that when it happens to one of the individuals or even a child.
Yeah, very traumatic.
And so the dynamics of that relationship became different than I had hoped for and different than I had expected. And ultimately, it didn't work out. And that was another blow for me.
Yeah, no kidding. You're young and now unemployable and divorced. And can't talk to people other than only a cat. That's not traumatic at all. I love how you just laugh and make me happy every time I'm with you. So
I know.
Wow.
I know. And so admittedly, that the psychological struggles along the way were real because it was so out of my control. I mean, the only thing that helped me was not doing things. And that was so opposite of, what I was used to and what I had believed about life. Like, I'll try really hard, I'll work. And
at 12 years old, completely self-propelling.
Yeah. And so even though I had different setbacks, like when I tore my ACL in high school, but then, it led me to another thing and then another thing and then another thing. And so I had learned to also have some confidence in that. But then with this one, that next thing didn't seem possible to materialize because literally if I would try to work towards something, my headache would get so bad I couldn't function and wipe out.
And if your brain doesn't work, it's your engine. Without the engine, you can't get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
The tires and everything else are useless without the engine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And I felt like even some of the supports that could have been available, it was, in a way, I still had to keep them at a distance because it would hurt, And so it was, definitely there were moments of just wondering how I was ever going to make it through life, especially with the perspective of, okay, this could be forever.
Yes.
What am I going to do? I'm just going to sit and stare the rest of my life. Like, what in the world? And I had dreams of a family. I had dreams of progression of moving forward. And it just seemed like there was nothing that I could do to make any of that happen. And I'm really grateful that because I am a learner, like I do want to, work my way through things and understand. I was able to come across just some different books and different podcasts and blogs and things that really started to give me a change in perspective that brought me a lot of hope. And what's interesting about it, because, over the years, so my injuries actually happened in 2012.
Not that long ago, really.
So it's been almost 10 years. And obviously now I am a lot more functional. I mean, I can engage with you.
And my house is very loud.
Yeah. And I can handle things now. I still have to keep it in like a smaller dose than maybe the average person.
Yeah.
But I have improved a lot to where I've been able to include things in my life like friendships and just social activities here and there, and reading more and stuff that has really helped me, has really been a blessing. Again, I still have to really structure it out and not do too much in any one day, and for the most part, I still have a quiet lifestyle, or it can blow up, which unfortunately it did even just a couple of weeks ago. And for about a week, I was just out of commission and sleeping a ton and had to be really in quiet. Yeah. So it can still happen, but I am able to do more. And so I was able to access these resources, which I absolutely believe that it was God that led me to it.
Yes.
That, he had mercy on me, and he was like, okay, you're like hanging on by this little thread, but I'm going to give you another little thread, and I'm going to give you another one, and I'm going to give you a rope until you're still holding on to it, and you're still like, wait a minute.
That's powerful.
But little by little, those things happened, and also even just reading scriptures. It's been so powerful too. So that things that I feel like were specifically religious, but also other things that changed my perspective. And ultimately what it came to is I've come to believe that with our experiences, especially in some of the things that are the most difficult, there's purpose. There absolutely is a purpose. And essentially we all come to earth in the same way. I mean, we're all born. Everybody gets here that way. And we're all going to leave earth the same way.
Right.
We're going to die at some point in time. At some point in time, this sojourn that we have on earth will be over. So
the purpose, we come in the same way, we leave the same way, and somewhere in the middle there, the dash, like people say.
Yeah.
That dash, what do we do with it?
Exactly. And but we are eternal beings. I mean, there was a spirit that we had that has entered our body and is giving us this life. And that spirit will still exist when we die. And I believe that God is our Heavenly Father, and that his purpose for us is progression. Is progression of our souls. And I believe that through every experience that we have in life, we have the opportunity to allow it to be something that will let us grow, that will let us become richer beings, and develop qualities that really we couldn't have gotten any other way. And I mean, that's definitely been what I've experienced.
Yeah.
In fact, I've had brief moments of, I don't know, I guess you could call it enlightenment, even along my journey. Because I have to admit, most of the time, I've just been like, when is this going to end? This is going to end, right?
Can I just go jump again?
Can I just have my life back? I mean, because, I've never been running again since that happened. I haven't done dancing. I mean, I've done, I'm like, I can kind of move a little bit. Yeah.
You sang by the piano.
but it's not, it's
not
nothing like what my history had been, and that I was so passionate about, and that did bring me joy. So now I've had to go for the deeper joy.
Yeah.
And
so not just happiness and fun.
Yeah.
But it's a deeper thing. That's one of the things that Channing told us in the beginning of the month. About joy being so much more pure and intense and intentional. And also he mentioned the connection to God. That's how he has found joy, because it can't come from just the outside sources, like being in the FBI and being cool.
Yeah. And that's what, for me, I mean, I was stripped of almost every outside thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Because, career gone, wiped out, that blew up.
Marriage.
Ultimately marriage gone, wiped out, that was over. physical capacity, ability to connect with friends, gone. Like, and, or at least, so severely limited that it felt like it was non-existent anymore. Even though, again, looking back, I'm like, oh, Heavenly Father, He did give me just those little strands to hold on to. But it's interesting because I have to admit, for most of the time, even though the medical professionals are like, oh, no, not going to happen. Yeah. But I've had to maintain a belief. No, miracles can happen.
Oh, I like that.
Miracles can happen, and they can happen in an instant.
Yes.
And, and I just have to mention, related to that, one of my favorite scriptural stories is Joseph of Egypt.
Oh, I love that one.
I mean, he was sold into slavery. Mm-hmm. And when he was trying to do the right thing, things went wrong. Then he went to prison.
He was accused, yeah.
Yeah, then he went to prison, and he interpreted a dream for the baker and the butler of the Pharaoh, and he was like, okay, remember me when you get out and go back to the Pharaoh. Yeah. No, they forgot him for another couple of years. And so how forgotten would he have felt? Yeah. But then in an instant, when the Pharaoh had his dream that could not be interpreted, and Joseph had the skills to do that, boom, like his life changed. And so I believe that as the capacity of God. I believe that He can do miracles. Now, when does He do them and how? And, that's the hard mortal part. Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems like hope and patience have kept you in a joyful spot, regardless of the circumstances around you. Because that's another thing that Channing was telling me that was fascinating. He said in a book he's reading, that I have to read it. It's like the how-to of happiness of something. 50% genetics of joy, joy kind of people, or happiness. 10% more circumstantial. But 40% is behavior-based, which is, I think, where you are. You behaved the best you can with hope and connection to God, and connecting as much as you can, and doing as much as you can for yourself.
Right.
So you can continue to live joy, even though your life should not look like it's joyful.
Well, and something that's been interesting is that there have been times when I've been like, wow, maybe I don't want this to end. Now that sounds wild, right?
Yeah.
And I can't say, it just lasts forever and I'm feeling that way the whole time. But although actually kind of those periods in some ways do get a little bit longer. And here's why. Because my understanding now in so many ways is so much deeper than it was before. I mean, now not that I never considered myself one of the popular kids or the groups like that. Like, I had my friends, but, I still had my social challenges. And yet I still did have a lot of opportunities. And because I have an outgoing personality, I could approach people and develop different friendships. But I couldn't do any of that when my headaches were so severe. And
completely alone. You've had to be completely alone.
I learned what it's like to be the person at a social gathering that's alone in the corner.
Oh my goodness.
I learned what it's like when people inadvertently, like, they're well-intentioned good people, but they're caught up in their activities and their own life, and so they might forget about that person who can't do anything. And I learned what it feels like to be that person and to feel forgotten and to feel limited and to wonder if it's ever going to end, and to have so many questions and concerns about my future. And because I had been pretty resilient before, and I was given these challenges, and I was like, okay, well, let me see how I can maneuver my way around, and what can I do? And in this case, really, there wasn't anything for a long time except quiet. You have to learn to have peace in this. And I fought it and fought it and fought it. But
deep thinking. You had to be so introspective.
Yeah.
So it gave you a lot of wisdom.
But I am so grateful for those things that I've learned that I don't think that I could have understood any other way. Yes. Because I wasn't forced to do it. I wasn't forced to have that experience. And in fact, there's a quote, actually. Let me go ahead and share it with you now, that I really, really like.
I like quotes.
This is by Orson F. Whitney.
Uh-huh.
And he says, "No pain that we suffer, no trial that we experience is wasted. It ministers to our education, to the development of such qualities as patience, faith, fortitude, and humility. All that we suffer and all that we endure, especially when we endure it patiently, builds up our characters, purifies our hearts, expands our souls, and makes us more tender and charitable, more worthy to be called the children of God. And it is through sorrow and suffering, toil and tribulation that we gain the education that we came here to acquire, and which will make us more like our Father and Mother in heaven."
And you're going to text me that.
Yes.
Oh, that's powerful. We're not
I
here
will.
victims. We're here to learn stuff, and it's hard to learn.
Yes. Yeah. And it's easy to get caught up in all the busyness of life because, you have to pay attention to it. Otherwise, you don't survive. Like if you don't work,
You have to feed yourself.
Like there
and
are
all
things
those.
that you have to do. Yeah. But ultimately, there's going to be an end to that. For some people, it happens sooner than for other people. And some people in certain countries, they might be struggling most of their life for water, like for clean water. There are so many struggles that people have that if you're not experiencing those, it's easy to just get caught up in your own rat race.
Yeah.
And so
compare yourself to other people and your old self.
Yeah. And view the ones who seem to have more than you, more opportunities or money or whatever it is, and be like, oh, why can't I have that? But what about the people who don't? What about the people who have less than you? Yeah. And, and something that my brother said to me, even when I was in the midst of this, he's like, well, you know what? You can still walk. And I was like, that's true. I can still walk. Wow. And so I started to learn just those things that are so easy to take for granted.
Right.
And because I was said, well, I can't run, I can't be active, I can't move a lot or it hurts my head. But then he was like, you can walk.
You can see, you could drive, you could talk.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I came to really value what I kind of call the evolution of your soul, which I feel like is what God gives us, what he hopes for us. Mm-hmm. He lets us have these experiences. And the really cool thing about him, because he loves us so much, is that with his help, like if we rely on him, if we develop that connection, then he is able to empower us to gain the maximum benefit, the maximum understanding, the maximum character growth from these experiences.
Oh, I like that.
And I just feel like sometimes life turns up the volume until we get to that point where we're so far on our knees that we're like, okay, what do I need to do? And
it's that forced humility. We've talked about that with joy, connected with joy. And that at that point, you were already kind and wonderful. Imagine it, because you're such a kind and wonderful. But having that dramatic change in your paradigms, like your whole life was nothing like what you imagined. It forces you to be humble, and you can go like remember the scripture of Job. I really like that one, because he would say, just curse God and die.
Yeah.
But you chose not to do that, right? Just like Job. It's like, no, I lost everything, but I'm just going to keep going. Because I'm here to learn, and I'm here to evolve my soul. I like that. That's what I should say to people. Oh, your life is hard. I'm just evolving my soul.
It's true. It's true. I really believe that. I believe that all these experiences that we have can change us and develop qualities in us that couldn't be had any other way. And that might not even wake us up, or we might not have been woken up except through these experiences. And so you know what, if I had to choose, if I had the opportunity to be like, okay, I'll have this happen or not, I'm glad it happened, because it changed me in those important ways. And not, I always tried to help people and wanted to be a good person before, but the depth of understanding that I now have of some people's situations, just because I've experienced similar things, I am so grateful for, because it has influenced how I can interact with them and what I can do and what my focus is. And another it's a song that I really like that I feel like also kind of describes the perspective that I've come to believe. It's Temporary Home by Carrie Underwood. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
I don't recognize it.
But she gives a couple of examples through the music. One of a little boy who's 6 years old. I think he must be in foster care. And, he's just shuttling from house to house, parent to parent. And the chorus is, "This is my temporary home. It's not where I belong."
Oh.
And let's see, I might have to read it.
You can sing it for us.
That is not a skill I have, but
we had one guest that has sung for us. Emily, I think you know her. Emily Baxman. She sang just one little line. I'm like, yes.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, if I could, I would. But okay. So this is the chorus for each of the scenarios. So one is the boy who I think is in foster care. She doesn't mention that, but he's going from different home to home. Another lady who has a child but no job. She's in a halfway house. And this is the chorus. "This is my temporary home. It's not where I belong. Windows in rooms that I'm passing through. This is just a stop on the way to where I'm going. I'm not afraid because I know this is my temporary home."
That's so sweet.
I just think it's so powerful.
It gives you hope. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're all going to have challenges, and we might have ones that, last a lifetime. Some people do. And the last scenario that she talks about in her song is a guy, he's just about to die, and his family is all there with him. Yeah. And he says, "But this is my temporary home. It's not where I belong."
Oh.
And so really, it like we were talking about earlier, ultimately there will be a change. Like there will come that time when we're not here anymore. Yeah. But I feel like even with the circumstances that we have to be able to keep that perspective to give us strength and joy as we get through them, of being like, you know what, this isn't me. This isn't my soul. This isn't my core. Like, this is my temporary home. And I can make it through, because I feel like if we don't, when we let those outer circumstances that, fiery trials and difficulties that sometimes hit us, if we let that in, it can just overwhelm us. I mean, and then you
just give up,
go forward.
Right. Mm-hmm. You give up, and that darkness becomes like final.
Yeah.
Permanent.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And so I just really like that idea, like, believing that there's a purpose for all the things that you go through, and there are benefits and there are blessings. And I mean, there's so many stories, so many inspirational stories about people who, they have horrific experiences, but they are able to make it a blessing, like something that helps other people, something that becomes life-changing. And that's where it comes down to our perspective on it, our attitude. And by no means do I feel joy all the time, or am strong and peppy all the time and enlightened and like, yes, this was amazing
every time I see you.
But
there's a purpose, and that you can go beyond this and wake up to a sunny day. Again, so I'm so impressed with you. It's so fun to get to talk like this without interruptions, because wherever we are, there's always other people, or we're cooking, or we're doing something different. So it's fun to really get to the depth of why it makes you so happy, because it's very obvious that you're joyful. And I would never have guessed any of this if it wasn't for our friend Philip. That that introduced us. And then I think you've gained a lot of compassion. And so next month we'll be speaking about acceptance, and we have like 1 minute. And I'd love to have you give me your last thoughts, and maybe something that you feel strongly you want to share, because I've learned a lot just from talking to you for a few minutes. And I think one of the first steps that you must have taken, accept where you were, and just move on from there. Because if we can accept ourselves and our circumstances, we're always miserable, thinking, why me? Why can I have not done this? Why can it have happened? Why wouldn't it happen to somebody else? I don't deserve it. You know? So what are your last thoughts today?
I think related to what you're saying is that the things that have already happened, the circumstances that are already in our life, they're there. They happened.
Yeah.
And the only way to make the future different is you have to stop dwelling on those things, because otherwise, I mean, so suppose, I spend the whole next year being like, man, this happened and I'm so bummed and I'm so worried and I'm so overwhelmed with it. Well, then that year will arrive. Like I will get to that point, but then I'm no further ahead.
Right.
And so I think, so time will keep coming, and we have the opportunity to make these changes, which I believe that with our belief systems, trusting that there is a purpose and that there's a God that loves you and he will help you through it. He will give you the tools to make it through any circumstance you have. He will. And we have to be looking for those instead of dwelling on the other things. Otherwise, we're that year down the road. And he's patient. Like, it's okay if sometimes you have years down the road where you're like, no, I can't do it. But the sooner that we can get to that point of opening up our perspective and being like, okay, it happened and this is a circumstance, but what's next? What can I focus on now? Then changes can start to come in droves. I mean, and it becomes powerful.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant, because you have now connected, from the little notes I've been taking, joy is really connected to hope and to faith and to purpose, and having that perspective and having the charity to go forward and love yourself and love other people.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've learned
so
much. This is wonderful of you to spend time with me.
My privilege.
Yeah,
my pleasure. Thank you so much.